My, how the circles of time turn and end up back where they started. Yes, welcome my friends to the first episode of Baldur's Gate Let's Play. Please insert CD edition, otherwise known as PICD by some. Back over 10 years ago, when any idiot with an unregistered hypercam could get on YouTube and record things, Chezni recorded a unfinished Let's Play of Baldur's Gate. It was a lot of fun. We did Baldur's Gate 2.2 mod, I believe, released by the Giverlings 3, but you know what? After all these years, it just felt wrong that it was unfinished. It didn't help that Lepcis went back and started watching all of my videos again, so that made me feel particularly guilty about it. Regardless, we are here today to begin what will hopefully be a very long and fun and successfully ended journey through the entirety of Baldur's Gate. But if you know anything about my Let's Plays, I don't always like to take things in a particularly normal or vanilla route, so we will be playing with a modded voice pack featuring the very man himself. Let me navigate the menu. We will be playing as Luther from Gladstone. Yes, for any of you who are coming off of the Lands of Lore Let's Play, hopefully you are as overjoyed as I am. This was actually inspired, apparently, over 10 years ago in the original Let's Play when Lepcis... So for those of you who don't know, Lepcis Magna is... I don't know how you would describe it. He's not my co-host because we don't record at the same time, but he very much is the counterpart to Please Insert CD. Please Insert CD. And he decided, after hearing in one of the episodes all those years ago where I excitedly talked about, oh man, I wish somebody would make a Luther mod, he made a Luther voice pack mod. That just sort of quickly jumped to the point in that regard. For those of you who would like to use this mod for yourself, I'm going to have a link below the video where you can download it and hopefully just set it up rather quickly. However, no credit is deserved by me. Lepcis took all the time to rip the audio files, put them together, and put it into a very nice executable package that all you have to do is just run the executable in your Baldur's Gate folder and it installs the Luther voice pack. That being said, that is probably the only introduction you need to actually watch this Lands of Lore Let's Play. Oh, other than one other point. There's going to be a evil Luther run and a good Luther run, because Lepcis, in his madness, actually designed an evil Luther voice and a good Luther voice, so we can't not use both of them. So this video will actually be the introduction to both of those Let's Plays. So if you swap over to the other Let's Play and happen to get a bit of the sense of deja vu, like you've heard this before, chances are you have, and you can just skip this whole episode. Anyway, that is essentially the grounds for the introduction of the Let's Play itself. We are now going to spend the rest of the episode unscriptedly, so, you know, dangers abound at the ramblings of this, of Chezni, your madman host. We'll be spending the rest of the episode going into a very, very in-depth look of the character creation, what stats do, rationality behind whether some stats are worth it or not, etc., etc. This is going to get very mechanical. If that's not your thing, just skip this episode. It's fine. You've already got the info you need. Move on. We'll get to the actual Let's Playing in the next episode. However, for those of you like myself who love getting in depth with all of the very, very, what's the word? Can't think of it. Anyway, getting very close to the code of the game, then please, by all means, continue watching. Okay, so as I'm sure you know, Baldur's Gate is, of course, based on AD&D, and there's something we should discuss very briefly in regards to AD&D, tabletop games, and just playing a game in general. It has been said before that there are 3 different ways to play a game. You can play it for power play reasons, aka you're a player who loves the mechanics, you want to win, you want to learn the game as well as you can, and conquer it in whatever form that it presents itself in. There's also role players, people who they just want to go out into the game and discover kind of a new way of expressing themselves. They want to take on the role of a new person, someone who they aren't, and explore the world creatively in that manner. It's not really important whether they play the game well or not. They don't really even care about the mechanics. They just want to be someone else and interact with the world as that other person. The last group would be social players. Players who don't necessarily care about winning and aren't necessarily trying to find a creative outlet for themselves. They're the kinds of people who just like to play with other people. They just want to hang out with other people. It doesn't really matter what they're doing as long as everyone's having a good time. They get to catch up with their friends, have good conversation. Extroverts tend to fall in that category, but you can find introverts there too. Okay, if I was going to describe myself, pardon me, it would be probably leaning more towards the power player with a definite strong streak of social playing. And what's really interesting is that Baldur's Gate, when it was created, and even now, tried to hit all of those three kinds of gaming, right? All those three spheres of what a player might want when they play D&D. You can play the game more or less true, as close as they could get in a programmatical format to D&D, AD&D at the time, in that the rules, to a fault, try to stick to the AD&D format. You can also roleplay, because they've created this entire world. You have alignment, you have reputation, you get dialogue choices, you can roleplay in the world, and the game is multiplayer, so you can play with other people, hitting all three of these marks. I am here to say, in what might be a rather unpopular opinion, that in many ways, unfortunately, after the tests of time and 2 decades of people analyzing the game and discovering everything about it, it is busted. And not in a necessarily great way busted. Like, some games can be busted, and they're a ton of fun to play because they're busted. But I believe I did not even touch on any of this last time. There are things in the game that just don't work. And if you are a power player, which unfortunately I tend to lean towards, it is very difficult to continue playing the game without thinking, wait, I should be taking advantage of this obvious exploit that probably wasn't supposed to be in the game, but yet I should do it anyway. So, but I also think there's value in role-playing, value in admitting that the world that you're in is a fantasy world. It is a place that you should attempt to treat as if it has a meaning. So how do we balance that? Because we're obviously not going to be playing with other people. So how do we balance this conflict of role play and power play? And the way we're going to do that today is by, when we play Luther, we are going to be doing an evil run and a good run simultaneously, side by side. But we're going to craft, and this is where we're getting a little bit rambly. We're going to try to craft both Luthers to be effective from a mechanical standpoint. We're going to take advantage of every mechanical piece of the game possible, every fluke, every advantage we can get. I don't pretend to know them all, but we will use the ones that I am aware of. But we will also, at the same time, attempt to play the character as Luther would be played, whether he's good or evil. Okay, enough of that explanation. That went on far too long. We are, of course, going to be playing as Luther. Luther is a human, so we're stuck automatically with that race. We don't need to choose anything in that regard. Now, this is where things start to receive a bit of interpretation. Luther in Lands of Lore essentially has the ability to cast everything. He can use any weapon, he can pick locks with the skeleton key, he can, well, I don't know if that's really necessarily considered picking a lock, but the point is that in Lands of Lore, Luther kind of is every class all at the same time. That being said, predominantly your stats lean towards both the fighter and mage categories, because intrinsically you have a fighter level and a mage level in the interface. Therefore, I believe that Luther is probably best represented as some sort of fighter mage. Now, we could go into Cleric a little bit because Luther does possess healing spells. He starts out with one in the game. However, Lands of Lore doesn't really follow D&D rules, and Luther can cast healing magic because the game just needed you to have healing magic. There isn't really a good explanation. So we are going to take the fighter-mage approach, or the mage-fighter approach. Now, for those of you familiar with the Baldur's Gate human multi-classing restrictions, they can't multi-class. They can only dual-class, which is actually very different from multi-classing. A lot of you probably already know this, but we are going to explain all of this in depth, so bear with me. Multiclassing is when your character splits his EXP or her EXP between 2 or 3 different classes all at the same time. When one class reaches enough EXP to gain a level, you then gain a level. However, your hit dice is halved, I believe. Or, well, I'm not actually sure. I didn't spend a lot of time studying multi-classes because I almost never use them. The reason this is different from the way that humans play is humans can't multi-class, they dual-class. And what that means is, at some point in their life, they decide, you know what? I don't want to be XYZ class that I currently am, I want to be ABC class. And so they immediately stop gaining EXP in their current class, and they choose a completely different class, and they start over as a level 1 character of that class. They get no benefits from their older class, they don't get any of the, I believe they don't get any of the HP, they don't get anything, they just get nothing. They essentially start over as a level 1 character. Now, at the point where they reach a level in their second chosen class that is 1 level higher than their older class, they suddenly unlock all of the old abilities from their older class. And this is where it gets really complicated, because there is a network of just skills and abilities that, for no intuitive reason, will overwrite or cancel out or nullify, etc., other abilities from one class to another. And so it's very important that you carefully choose how exactly you dual class and what level you dual class at, because we need to track. There's just a lot involved. I actually think that's probably too much to get too deep into every single scenario. So instead, let's focus on just the fighter mage scenario. We know we want Luther to be a fighter, we know we want him to be a mage. So which should we start out as which? Well, if you start out as a dual classing human that wants to go from mage to fighter, you are very much gimping yourself. The reason for this is that I don't know all the details because I was just a kid when AD&D was prominent, but essentially AD&D, while a lot of the ways levels were unlimited, there was kind of a cap. Like, for instance, druids could only get to level 14 because a level 14 druid was supposed to be the Grand Master druid, and there could only ever be one level 14 in the druid in the world at any given point in time. Now, this doesn't really make sense for a computer game because, well, you want all the classes to be equal, and what if you want to go beyond level 14? It's things like that that creates this sort of conflict, I suppose, in what happens when you start reaching those higher levels. Because when any class, when any class reaches a level beyond level 9 or 10, class dependent, mages it's 10, most of the other classes it's 9, they stop gaining the full amount of hit points that they would normally gain per level. So for instance, here we see that fighters here gain a D10 of HP per level. It's just the normal way fighters run. Mages, of course, gain the D4. I think there might be a subset of fighter, like, does the Berserker get D12? No, that might be later 5th edition D&D where certain classes get D12s. Regardless, obviously 10 is higher than 4. And because after you gain so many levels, you stop gaining this D10, you stop gaining this D4, and I think you just get 1 HP, or that might not be entirely right, but you get a very low number. It's like 1 or a D4, it's probably 1. Which means if you gain your first 9 levels of the game as a mage, you're only getting D4 HP, whereas if you gain your first 9 levels as a fighter, you're gaining D10, more than twice the value of HP. So it really makes sense from an HP standpoint to begin the game as a fighter. It also makes sense as well because fighters, after about level 13, stop gaining significant bonuses when they level up. They still continue to gain or lose, depending on how you want to consider it, 1 Phaco each level, which is, don't get me wrong, huge. The difference between a level 10 fighter and a level 20 fighter is 10 Phaco, which essentially nullifies 10 armor class points of whatever they're fighting. That's not small. But at level 7, I believe it is, they gain a half attack per round, and at level 13 they gain another half attack per round. And you have to also think that at level 9, they stop gaining the D10 HP. So about level 9 to level 13 is really where a fighter stops being interesting, because they stop gaining these big things. This is, of course, not considering the high level abilities that classes get when they reach, the ungodly like 30 and 40 level, but as an overall look at the class, you get diminishing returns, essentially, when you start reaching those higher levels. Whereas mages, on the other hand, they don't really care as much about HP, Phaco, attacks per round. They don't get those abilities in the early levels. No, mages really start to shine the higher level they get. When you start getting, your level 6, your level 7, your level 8 spells, the things that really let you warp reality and just start doing crazy stuff. Which means that it makes double sense for those two scenarios, both the fact that the fighter gets more HP and more abilities early, and the fact that mages tend to get more powerful the longer the campaign goes on, the higher level they are. We should start the game as a fighter. Again, in case it wasn't clear, when you dual class, when you class into a second class, you stop for the rest of the game gaining EXP in your initial class. So if we start as a fighter, let's say we go to level 9 as a fighter, because I'm pretty sure that's where we want to be. We're going to go to level 9 as a fighter, and then we're going to duel into a mage. Now, when we reach level 10 as a mage, when we reach level 10 as a mage, we will then we will unlock all the abilities of the fighter, but continue to gain levels as a mage. The EXP doesn't get split among the two. Fighter is just a locked out class. It's just a thing that we gain stats from and nothing else. So essentially we will continue progressing in mage. So that's a very long way of saying we're going to start out as a fighter and dual class into mage at level 9. Now the reason we're doing 9 is because for instance, if we were only playing Baldur's Gate 1, we would do it about level 6 or 7. I can't remember the exact number. We would not go all the way to 9, because there would not be enough EXP in the game to get us to the point where we could outclass. We would not reach level 10 in mage to gain our fighter abilities back, because there is an EXP cap in Baldur's Gate 1. Now, of course, we're going to be going all the way to Baldur's Gate 2, so we're going to plan for the long haul. Level 9 it is, fighter, which means for the entirety of Baldur's Gate 1, Luther will be a fighter. It's not necessarily 100% accurate to how he would be normally, but you could argue that in Lands of Lore, you don't really start getting a lot of MP until the higher levels anyway, and so, yeah. Now, again, we're trying to thematically theme Luther while at the same time also taking mechanical advantage of everything as much as we can. So we are going to ignore any of these subset classes, even though, a Kensai mage is notorious for being one of the best multi-classes in the game. Barbarian mage is also very strong, Berserker mage, etc., etc. Yeah, but we're just going to keep it as vanilla fighter. Now, we are, of course, going to be playing through the game twice. There are, with the evil Luther run and the good Luther run, Luther, this was an interesting choice. We can't just choose lawful good and chaotic evil. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. Yes, they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum, but we need to actually analyze what Luther is. Luther is a troublemaker. He's wanted by the Gladstone authorities right from the bat at the beginning of the game. Even though he's been unjustly accused of his crimes, he still doesn't try to prove his innocence. He runs away. He does not play by the rules, essentially, which means no matter what we do with Luther, he needs to be chaotic. So he could be either chaotic good, chaotic neutral, or chaotic evil, and that simplifies things a lot, because we just have those three. Good Luther should definitely be chaotic good. It fits his motive and modus operandi perfectly. He is, the epitome of going out, doing the right thing, but not following the rules while doing it. Now, as far as evil, we could go chaotic neutral, chaotic evil. Chaotic neutral isn't really Luther at all. Chaotic neutral just believes in chaos and nothing else. They're depicted over here in the description as being madmen, which Luther really isn't. Even when he becomes evil, sure, he might be a little crazy with power, but he's not a madman, which leaves us with chaotic evil. Now, I will go back and recreate the other counterpart character so that we have two distinct characters. Well, no, we can do that in this episode as well. We'll export the character and do it twice. Alright, so let's do good Luther first. Chaotic good. Here is a part. This is probably the biggest and first complaint about why Baldur's Gate is a busted game, is these stats right here. When I was a kid, I was so excited about, getting to finally play D&D, getting to roll the, your 3d6s and getting to put these numbers where you want them and building stats. Unfortunately, these numbers are kind of broken for a lot of reasons. Now, first, let's start with, the fact that it's fun to sit here, right, and keep re-rolling your character, hoping to get something higher. You're just like, oh man, we got 84, but maybe I can keep rolling and get something just a little bit higher. And there's a reason why in the artwork section of the community hub on Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition for Steam, that the top rated picture is just a GIF. Oh no, I said GIF. It's not GIF, it's GIF. Oh no, I'm going to animation internet Hades, but is a GIF of somebody just sitting here clicking this over and over again. And I think it's because a lot of us as kids probably did that. The problem is that you just don't need very high numbers here. I'm re-clicking because I'm trying to get 86 because that's kind of the sweet spot of where we want to be. But for instance, even before filming this, I sat down, clicked this a bunch of times, and got 90 within about 5 to 10 minutes. You don't need that many numbers, and here's why. Let's go ahead and recall our 84, and we're going to subtract everything here. And there we go. We have our 60 stats to play around with. Let's first go row by row and examine each stat in a vacuum. Not related to class, not related to long-term character goals, etc., etc. Out of all of these 6, dexterity might be considered the best one. It is the one that gives the most innate bonuses without being class-specific. There are a lot of bonuses tied to dexterity related to thieving skills, but even if you throw all of those bonuses out, you get a bonus to hit for ranged weapons, which honestly every character in your party should have a ranged weapon. You get a bonus to armor class. I think, you also get an initiative bonus. Now, initiative gets pretty nitty-gritty deep into the way combat works, and we might as well go into it now because we're opening up all the doors as far as stats and mechanics in this episode, so we don't have to do it later. Okay, so in Baldur's Gate, a single round of combat is normally 6 seconds long. Within those 6 seconds, if your character has 1 attack per round, then they will attack 1 time within those 6 seconds. If your character has 2, they'll attack twice, and so on and so forth. Then you get into something called initiative and speed factor. Initiative is your character's base initiative based on their dexterity stat, in addition to a randomly generated number by the computer, which I couldn't find strong evidence to indicate the exact number that's randomly generated, or the range that it's randomly generated in addition to your speed factor. Your speed factor is a stat tied to your weapon. Every weapon type typically has a different speed factor. For instance, daggers have a very low speed factor, and the lower the better. The lower the number, the faster it is. Daggers have, I think, a speed factor of 1, whereas two-handed swords typically have a speed factor of 10. That means that within the 6 seconds of combat that the game dictates a round is, a person with a dagger is going to attack very early within those 6 seconds, whereas the person with a speed factor of 10 using the two-handed sword is going to attack at the end of those 6 seconds. Now, this number is fluctuated a little bit by the initiative, which is, again, this base number drawn on by dexterity in addition to the random number that's generated by the computer. Typically, speed factor of a difference of 1 to 10 is going to dictate that the person with the dagger is always going to attack first, also because they probably have high dexterity if they're using a dagger in the first place, and not something bigger. But yes, in general, it allows you to attack first earlier in the round. That might not sound like a lot, but if you look at it from a mechanical perspective, what this allows you to do is a person with a higher speed factor can enter into combat with an opponent, check the message box at the bottom of the screen to see when they attack, see if they hit or missed, and then run away. Wait for the round of combat to reset, then run back in with their higher speed factor weapon, get a hit in, and run away. I know, right? That's such a nitty-gritty, small, wacky mechanical min-max, but it is what you can do with speed factor. That being said, and I know this whole thing started because we just started talking about dexterity. Dexterity is the most complicated. We'll get out of here soon. But there are attacks per round, which means that how does the game dictate your speed factor and initiative if you attack multiple times per round? Well, what it does is it divides the round into different equal portions. So if you attack twice per round, your attacks will come at within the 3-second mark and the 3 to 6 second mark. And if you have a speed factor of 1, you'll attack early on in the 1 to 3 second mark, and then within the 3 to 6 second mark, you'll attack early on in that range. So you would attack maybe like before the first second completed and before the fourth second completed, whereas a person with a two-handed sword attacking twice would attack near the end of the 3rd second and near the end of the 6th second. As you know, you can get many attacks per round in Baldur's Gate, upwards of 5 without improved haste. Improved haste essentially cuts the combat round in half, so you can get up to 10 attacks per round, but it gets messy, and it basically just 5. 5 is under normal circumstances the most number of attacks you can have in a round. If you're only attacking once per round, speed factor matters a lot. If you're attacking 5 times per round, it stops mattering, because it really doesn't matter if you attack, because 6 divided by 5 is like, what, 1.2, I think? So it really doesn't matter if you attack early within those 1.2 seconds or later within those 1.2 seconds. The fact is, you're attacking so quickly, or you have so many attacks per round, it really doesn't matter. So it matters, speed factor, initiative matters far less as the game goes on. That being said, it still is a bonus that dexterity gives you. Of course, the more important bonuses are the aforementioned armor class increase, as well as the bonus to hit with ranged weapons. Upwards, I think, of plus 4 or 5 when you get them to about 18. It's pretty big. Whew. That being said, that means that essentially every character wants 18 dexterity. And that's very disappointing, because there's no reason you wouldn't want a character with 18 dex. It just helps everyone, and it sort of feels like it becomes the prerequisite for playing any character. It's like, oh, am I playing a character? I better devote my obligatory 15 points into dexterity before I get to actually create my guy. Okay, dexterity is done. If you're still with me, pat yourself on the back, grab a drink of water or something. I know I need one. One moment. Okay, strength. Strength and constitution are probably more or less tied in terms of importance, again, in a vacuum. Now, it will depend whether or not you're ever going to be fighting normally with physical weapons. Like, obviously, if you're a dedicated spellcaster, strength is far less important. Constitution, obviously, very important for everyone because it dictates their bonus HP. Let's use strength first. Strength dictates your bonus damage when you're using, I believe, any melee weapon. It might affect chance to hit. Actually, let me check that real quick. Yeah, so it totally changes your chance to hit. Oh crap, hang on. Okay, if Chezni can get his windows correct here. It totally changes your chance to hit, your Thaco. So strength gives increased Thaco at higher levels, increased damage with physical attacks, and not ranged attacks, I don't believe. It also increases your bashing, which is very, very minor. Oh my gosh, I just blanked on the last thing it does. Right, and it increases weight, your carrying capacity. 3 of those 4 things are in general applicable to everyone. The bashing percentage doesn't really matter that much, so let's get that one out of the way first. Bashing is your percentage chance of opening a container the same way a thief would with pick locks. You don't get any EXP when you bash something open, but effectively it functions exactly like a pick lock's ability. It's also never going to be very high, typically, unless you have something ridiculous like 25 strength, which you normally can't have under most circumstances, unless you're really gunning for it. But if you have a dedicated thief, typically you don't need to bash things open. I guess if you're going through the game solo with a high strength character, it can be your fallback to opening things, but there you have it. Regardless, bashing, not a big deal. It's not why people take strength. Let's go to the second worst benefit of strength, which is the increased carrying capacity. Now, to a certain extent, you do need some carrying capacity. If you have, I think, 3 strength, the number of pounds you can carry is something ridiculous like 3. It is, your character can hold like a quarterstaff and that's it. So you do need some strength to be able to wear at least plate mail of some kind and a couple magical weapons, etc. The higher strength you get in the higher strength levels is mostly just for being the party's pack mule. Anyone can do it. It's very helpful when you do have a very high strength character so that you can just give them anything you want. You don't have to worry about organizing the inventory spaces, but it's mostly a convenient thing. As long as everyone has around 10 strength, you're going to have more than enough carrying capacity to, for the most part, carry anything in the game. What's really important about strength is its 2-hit armor class 0, or Thaco bonus, and its damage bonus. Obviously, anyone fighting with a physical weapon wants to hit their opponent, so increasing your Thaco is never a bad thing. That being said, your Thaco only starts increasing at about the 17 to 18 mark, so you do need to invest very deeply into the stat to get the best bonuses. Most of the stats are like that. You really, in about the 10 to 14 range, a lot of times you don't get any difference in your bonuses whatsoever. You really do need to get into that 15, 16, 17, 18 range before you start getting the good stuff. Same thing with the other best part of the strength ability, which is the increased damage. Obviously, you're trying to hit people, so the Thaco is good, and when you hit them, you want it to hurt, so the increased damage is good. It's a no-brainer, flat bonus. Not every character will want 18 strength, but we're a fighter, so we definitely want 18 strength, especially because fighters benefit from this secondary ability right here. I think this is called extraordinary strength or something like that. I want to say that's the name. This is on every roll of a fighter character or a warrior character. I think paladins and rangers also get this. The game rolls a D100, and now depending on where you land within this D100, you gain additional benefits on top of what you've already gained. Additional Thaco, additional damage dealt, as well as additional carrying capacity and bashing ability. It's basically like, oh, are you a fighter character? Would you like more of what you already have? There you go. There's no reason as a fighter to never have 18 strength, especially because of this extraordinary strength ability. Now, the extraordinary strength ability is just kind of a head scratcher. You have to ask yourself, why? Why does it exist? Why does it add, what does it add mechanically? What depth does it add to the game? And really, on the surface level and even deeper, it doesn't add anything to the game. It's just a randomly generated number that says, hey, did you want more damage? Did you want to hit more often? Take it. It's just, the best roll you can get here is 0-0, which represents 100. At 100, okay, so let's take the difference between 18 strength and 18/00 strength. You get, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's around 4 extra Thaco and probably 1 or 2 more damage, just because you happen to get lucky and roll 100. It doesn't make any sense. And what's even funnier is the difference between 18 and 19 strength has to account for all these different tiers of extraordinary strength. I forgot to mention that extraordinary strength functions in tiers. So if you rolled between 1 and 50, you're in tier 1. And then between, it's like 50 and 70, you're in tier 2, 70 and 80, around there is tier 3, 80 and 99, or it might be like 90 and 99 is tier 4. The last tier is 0-0. So you have all these different tiers of extraordinary strength, and each tier higher is better than the one before. You have a 50% chance of just entering the worst tier of extraordinary strength, which again, not to confuse you, is still better than an 18 strength. Now if you're lucky and you flipped a coin, you got higher than 50% like we did here, you enter into these higher tiers of strength. But again, the difference between 18 strength and 19 strength has to account for all of these tiers. So even if by some miraculous chance you rolled a total roll that was super high and you got 0-0 in your total strength, it doesn't matter, because the moment you bump your strength from 18 to 19, which is very doable even in permanent ways, your extraordinary strength is thrown out the window. It doesn't even matter anymore. If you go from 18 no extraordinary strength to 19 strength, you suddenly jump like 4 or 5 Thaco and 1 or 2 damage. I think it's probably 2 damage per hit. It's pretty ridiculous. Regardless, I don't like it. I don't like the extraordinary strength mechanic. It's silly. It doesn't add anything to the game. Most characters that deal physical damage will want an 18 strength. Characters who fight predominantly with only ranged weapons will of course be able to skirt around and get about 10, but again, there's almost no reason to take 18 strength. Constitution. Constitution functions in much the same way, although the rulebook, the manual that I spent so many years, and I'm sure some of you spent many years of your youth poring over yourself, lies. Just like so many CRPGs out there, many of the stats in the manual are incorrect or just not even present. In the manual, they reference the percentage chance of still being able to resurrect yourself after death. Now, of course, this doesn't matter for the main character, because if the main character dies, then the game starts over anyway, so it's irrelevant. But for other characters, having a higher constitution does not increase or decrease their chances of success of being resurrected after dying. The only thing that matters is whether they've been what's termed gibbed, which is when they take 10 more damage than their if they go below 10 damage after they get hit, their body explodes and you can't resurrect them. Otherwise, Constitution doesn't affect that in any way. If you're a halfling, or I want to say a dwarf, Oh, I better check. Oh, hang on. Back to the wiki. Okay, yes. Halfling, dwarf, or gnome. You get something that's been termed the shorty bonuses, which is a saving throw bonus that you get if you're one of the smaller races and you have higher constitution. You get more of these saving throw bonuses. Humans don't get it. We don't need to worry about it with Luther. But if you are one of the smaller races, you are going to want to take advantage of your racial bonuses and pump your constitution up. There's other bonuses like you resist fatigue longer, but that doesn't really matter because, like, it's just essentially the passage of time affects your character less so they can perform longer without needing to sleep. But you sleep so much in Baldur's Gate anyway that it never matters. Like, it will never be really meaningful if your character can go longer without sleeping. It also affects how quickly you become intoxicated, which, again, doesn't really matter. It might be good for role players. A role-playing dwarf with 18 con is going to be able to pound them down way quicker than your pansy elf with his 7 con or whatever. But the only thing drinking really gets you in Baldur's Gate is rumors, and rumors don't affect anything mechanically. And if you already know the game in its entirety, which most of us do at this point, drinking is not a thing you're ever really going to do. That leaves us with what is actually important, which is the regen stat and the base HP bonus stat. Now, regen is something that doesn't apply to most players. Regenning only even starts to kick in, I believe, at 20 constitution. So you would need to play something with a constitution bonus, like I think orcs, don't they get con bonuses? I know dwarves do. So they would be able to put their con up to 19, and if they find a book in the game that raises their con by an additional 1 point, then suddenly they start regenerating a measly 1 HP for every 60 seconds, I think it is. It helps, but it's not like anything that is necessarily needed. It's more just kind of a, haha, you have high con, you regenerate your HP like a troll or something. The higher constitutions beyond 20 will increase your regeneration up to 25, where you regenerate 1 HP per every 10 seconds. That's certainly not negligible, but it's not realistic to expect to ever get up that high. So typically people can look at constitution as a stat that does one thing and one thing only: gives you HP. Well, turns out HP is pretty good. It allows you to win DPS races. It allows you to survive after you've hit a trap. In general, there's never a reason not to want more HP. So again, we're cranking this up to 18. Okay, in vanilla Baldur's Gate, intelligence was nearly a worthless stat for any character that wasn't a spellcaster of the arcane type. Now, in Baldur's Gate 2, and thus Baldur's Gate EE, we get a much better sort of balance between having low intelligence and high intelligence. It's not perfect, but now you need at least a level 9 intelligence to use things like staves, or not staves, wands, magical items. I want to say certain scrolls. So if you play a cleric and you find a cleric scroll but your int is too low, you can't even cast it off the scroll, I believe. I want to say that's how that works. I don't have a ton of experience with it. But thieves get this ability called use any item, so thieves can circumvent this anyway, and I think they can bypass the intelligence limit based on that, although again, I never play as a thief, so I'm not sure on that one. Doesn't matter. The point is that intelligence now allows you to use magic items if you have 9. So most characters will want to have 9. But what does it do after that? Well, if you're not a spellcasting class, not a whole lot. It allows you to increase your lore stat every time you level up, or if you're dumb as a rock, it decreases or gives you a penalty on your lore stat. Lore is the stat that allows you to right-click on an item that is unidentified and naturally identify it. Sounds pretty useful, right? But if you've played Baldur's Gate for any amount of time, you know that there are about 10 other ways to identify things. You can cast an identification spell. You can cast an identification... Alright, I've been talking too much. An identification scroll. You can go to a shopkeeper and ask them to identify it. There are certain magical items that identify things. Typically, lore is not a justifiable stat for increasing intelligence on its own merit. There just isn't a good reason for it. Even if you were a 9 intelligence wizard, you could still learn the identify spell and cast it to identify unidentified objects. It's mostly a convenience thing. It gets annoying to have to constantly cast identify over and over again on magical items, which is why it's nice when you have a character with high lore, but it's certainly not required. We, of course, are going to dual class into a wizard later, so we will want the requisite 18 intelligence, which is going to give you, oh my goodness, I don't even remember anymore. I just know that you need 18 for, I think it gives you more spells per level, but I need to double check that. Okay, that's kind of hilarious. Mages are pretty much all I have ever played as, and I didn't even remember what int does. It does increase the number of spells per level that you get. It also will limit your maximum spell level. That's different from the number of spells, of course, based on your intelligence. So if you have very low intelligence, you can't get higher than like 5 or 6 level spells, but the higher up you can get up to the 9. Also, it increases your scribe chance, which is just a really dumb mechanic in general. Scribe chance is a percentage chance that a wizard has of successfully scribing their scroll over into their mage tome. The reason they did that is because in original D&D, this is how it worked. When you found a magical scroll and the mage wanted to copy it into their book, it was a big deal. Like, you kind of, on some level, were just supposed to use scrolls in and of themselves. They were sort of supposed to be these one-use magical things. But then if the wizard had a lot of extra money and extra time and resources in between adventures when people met, they would say, oh, I want my mage to, copy this scroll into his spell book. And that would require a lot of the mage's time and effort. And that's why it would happen in between adventures. In order to simulate that, they added this sort of chance of successfully scribing a scroll or not, but it doesn't work. It just provides frustration, because some scrolls in the game, there's literally only one copy of them. And so if you fail at scribing a very, very important spell, you're just out of luck. You just can't have it. Not to mention the fact that it's primarily out of the player's control. Sure, you can raise your intelligence, but you can only get to 18. 18 isn't even 100% success rate, which means there are going to be those times where you just fail to scribe a spell for no other reason than you just rolled the dice and it didn't work out in your favor. This is typically something that people just save and reload the game when they do it. I don't know of anyone who tries to be so hardcore that... I'm sure there's someone out there. Okay, let me back up. I'm sure if you wanted to challenge yourself, if you wanted to do a challenge run and no reload run, yes, this mechanic could be exciting because you no longer have 100% control over what's in your spellbook. But I think what most people would do would be to find ways to manipulate very momentarily their intelligence up to 25, scribe all the important stuff, because at 25 in, I think you have like a 98% chance of success. And it just becomes another stat manipulation game. It's not a good mechanic. That is also what int does for you. But because wizards want 18 intelligence anyway, there's no uniqueness. I suppose it matters for your party members that you get, but it doesn't... It's just not a very interesting or interactive stat. Anyway, again, we are a wizard. We're going to go up to 18 int. This leaves the black sheep of the family, wisdom and charisma. Wisdom is probably the game's worst stat if you are not a class that requires it. You know how intelligence, at least at level, or rather at stat number 9, gives you the ability to use magic items? Wisdom does nothing. Now in the manual, it states that wisdom gives you a bonus saving throw to spells. That is just a lie. It doesn't exist. The bonus to saving throws don't exist. If you did get a bonus saving throw when you increased your whiz, totally would be worth it. Totally would be a good idea to invest in wisdom, and then there would be a meaningful choice you have to make. You wouldn't just be able to pump everything up to 18. But as it stands, the only thing wisdom does for a non-whiz casting class is it gives you a lore bonus. We already discussed lore bonus and intelligence. We don't need to go over it again. If you are not a class that uses wisdom, there is essentially no reason to have any points in wisdom at all. We will keep it at 3. There is a very minor effect, well, I shouldn't say minor, there is a very major effect that it has when a wizard casts limited wish or wish. However, it is not impactful enough to really matter, and in fact there are so many other ways to momentarily bring your wisdom up to 18 that if a wizard really wants to cast wish, they'll just do that, cast wish, and go back to the 3. It just doesn't matter. Charisma, marginally more useful than wisdom. To be fair, it is fairly useful. It just depends on whether or not you consider the usefulness to be necessary or just convenient. Charisma affects 2 things for the most part: your reaction modifier and your prices in stores. Without going into the scaling, it basically just says, hey, is your charisma really high? Well, you get a discount at stores. Is your charisma really low? Well, they're going to charge you more. But it's within the range of about 20% for most stats that you're probably going to have while playing the game. And 20% is 20%. I mean, 20% more gold is 20% more gold, but it's not that important. Like, you're going to have so much gold in the game that being delayed when you buy something isn't the end of the world. Now, I guess you could look at it that if you have a charisma of 3 versus a charisma of 18, it's more than just a 20% swing, it's more like a 40% swing, because you meet 0 in the middle somewhere, and then you go up to 20%, and then you meet 0 and go down to negative 20%, so the difference between negative 20 and 20 is, of course, 40. Okay, there is some rationale behind that, because now you're looking at about nearly a 50% increase. Well, we know the exact number, it's 40%, but 50 I can wrap my head around better for some reason. But it does mean that you will struggle less to obtain gold. But if you're going out adventuring everywhere, you probably aren't going to struggle for gold anyway, especially if you're a party that has a very high reputation. High reputation already gets you a discount at the shops. So, yeah, this one's give or take. That being said, this next part of charisma might be the deal breaker for you. It also affects something called the reaction, NPC reaction stat. Your NPC reaction stat is also a combination of your reputation and your charisma. Oh, and let me back up just a second and say, all that stuff I just said about shop charisma can actually be completely circumvented. The way you do this is you take the character with the highest charisma in your party, move their portrait up to the very top, and then when you shop, it will use their charisma instead of, well, your lowest character's charisma. So, in spite of all that stuff I just said about charisma affecting shop prices, if you have just a single party member with high charisma, none of it matters. Okay, moving on to NPC reactions. NPC reactions can be a little more important depending on how you want to play the game. To me, it's not a deal breaker, but maybe for you it would be. It changes the way certain NPCs react to you. It can change dialogue. It can change whether or not they agree with you, whether or not they like you, whether or not they're willing to go along with you. In some circumstances, it can actually give you more rewards for a quest, more money. In some cases, you get a reward as opposed to not having any reward at all. These cases, though, are few and far between. Or at least ones that are meaningful, ones that give you... You're not going to miss out on the game's best sword just because your charisma isn't high. You might miss out on a couple interesting trinkets along the way. Perhaps there's maybe one trinket that you need high charisma for that I'm unaware of, but for you it might be very imperative to the way you want to build your character. I don't know. In general, reaction matters if you want people to go along with you, doesn't matter if you just don't care. That being said, it's still more useful than wisdom, so It's the dumb stat for whatever points we happen to have left over. So there we are. I mean, it's a very boring looking character. 18 strength, 18 dexterity, 18 con, 18 int, with 3 wisdom and 9 charisma. It's sad, because if we were really playing Luther honestly should look something more like this. Let's just move these numbers around. He definitely is just a wise guy, and people love him. So his int should his charisma should be the highest stat. He is a very successful spellcaster, and he has arcane magic running through him. He should probably have an intelligence of 17. He's not the strongest guy in the world, but he can fight, which represents our strength of 15. He's nimble, he's constantly escaping the law, he's on the run, dexterity seems to suit him. He's not the sturdiest guy. He, isn't big, he doesn't look like a kind of like brick-built football player, so we put his con down pretty low. So this is probably how we would build Luther if we were role-playing him. But again, these points in wisdom, they do nothing. The difference between, I think, 10 con and 14 con do nothing, again. So whether we had it at 11 or 10 really wouldn't matter. We want the extra dexterity, so we would want that extra point, because that extra point represents another point in armor class. He's going to be a fighter, so why wouldn't we want extra strength? And it just creates this situation where, yes, you could roleplay, but at what point are you just roleplaying with random numbers that mean nothing? Because you can give a character that isn't a priest spellcaster 15 wisdom because you think they're supposed to be a wise guy, a wise person, but what are you getting out of it? It doesn't affect the game. It doesn't do anything. Why? I need to stop saying so I'm sorry. I've been saying this entire time. Taking a step back and looking at all of these stats, there are rare scenarios where stats are checked to determine how you can communicate with people. Rasad, the monk, who they added into the game, asks you riddles, and if your wisdom isn't high enough, you can't answer the riddle. There are also other dialogue options which check your int. I don't know if there are any that check Dex, Con, and Strength specifically, but maybe there are. And as stated earlier, Charisma has a very wide branching role on the reaction modifier, which will determine quests, rewards, and NPC dialogue. So I'm not trying to say that if you put points into these, they will never do anything, but they don't do anything meaningfully, they don't do anything consistently, and they don't really change the game overall. So again, we're going to very boringly put our stats here like this. We could, the reason we did this is we have the cheats enabled here to just put everything to 18 so that we can even come in here and just adjust the stats like we would want to without having to re-roll over and over again. Which, in my opinion, at this point, after breaking down the stats like this, after proving that wisdom is useless, after showing that every class is going to want 18 EXP, it kind of makes me feel like these numbers are a bit of a farce. Like, if you are the kind of person who wants to come in here and put everything up to 18 with the cheat stat, I say do it. It's really not going to matter. Because a player character who is a power player, creating this class like this, we already have the important stats right here. The only difference wisdom is going to make is it's going to make things more convenient, but it's not really going to give you a mechanical advantage. Charisma kind of gives you a mechanical advantage because you have to acquire less money, but really that just means playing the game less amount of time. This doesn't really give you, again, a mechanical advantage in combat. If the game had a time limit, if you had only a certain number of days to complete your quests, then I would argue Charisma would give you a mechanical advantage, because being able to buy things quicker would be way more important. But as it stands now, it doesn't matter. Which is why, even though I had 90 earlier, and we could sit here and keep re-rolling and re-rolling ad infinitum until we eventually get, the highest stat possible, we don't need to. It's pointless. So that being said, we will crank all of our stats up to where they were before. And this will be our non-role-playing Luther, because I don't see a point in doing anything else. Okay, that was probably going to be the longest part of this video, and if you made it through that, I am sincerely impressed. But we had to go over all of that, so that way when we're interacting with it later, I don't have to try to take an aside and explain all of that all at once. Okay, so we have two different Luthers. One is good Luther and one is evil Luther. Now, what does Luther spend most of his time in the game wielding? Well, he has a sword and shield slot. The shield slot sometimes equips gauntlets, but the best shield slot items in the game are shields, typically. So he's going to be a sword and shield style kind of guy. This is actually kind of like a useless ability. In fact, if you are truly power playing, you don't want to use sword and shield. You want to equip weapons in your offhand, because not only does that give you an extra attack per round, it also gives you whatever bonuses that weapon has to your character while it's in their offhand. In fact, a common strategy is to equip a weapon that increases your attacks per round in your offhand and put a stronger weapon in your right hand, because the way that dual wielding works, you get one extra attack per round with your offhand weapon, but all other attacks are made with your main hand weapon. So if you have a weaker offhand weapon that increases your attacks per round, you'll get an extra attack for free anyway because you're dual wielding, and yeah, it might do less damage, but it's an extra attack, so who cares? And you'll also get an extra attack in your main hand weapon because your offhand weapon gives you an extra attack. It's dumb. It's definitely the most power play move. Because we're theming Luther in this way, we are going to go sword and shield. It's one of the things that I do see a reason, unlike the stats earlier where I said some stats are pointless. Even though sword and shield is weaker, the weapons here, the weapon choices, are represented in such a way that it's still okay. You can still go through the game with powerful weapons even if you go sword and shield. Technically, you won't be as strong, it doesn't matter. Now, Luther arguably wielded two-handed weapons in Lands of Lore. The best weapons in the game, of course, are Thohan's Greatsword and the Greatsword Firestorm. But Luther wields them single-handed. And there's a sword later in the game, well, about in the middle of the game, actually, called the Reaver of the Great Orc. And it is too heavy for Luther to use, even with two hands. He has to equip the Gauntlets of Might to equip it. So I would argue that even though they're called the Thohan's Greatsword, the Greatsword Firestorm, they actually aren't two-handed weapons. They probably fall more into the Longsword Bastard Sword category. Probably Bastard Swords. That being said, I want to create more of a distinct difference between good Luther and bad Luther. So even though we're going to copy the stats from both Luthers, we're going to have one Luther use longswords and one Luther use bastard swords. And simply because I feel like the hero always uses the longsword, we'll have good Luther use the longsword. We're fighters, so we can get up to 5 points, which is Grand Mastery in a single weapon. So we'll be going for 5 points in longsword eventually. Now I think we can get 5 points in longsword. I don't even remember how many extra points we're going to get. It might be... Well, let's assume we get 1 every level. And if we're going to go up to level 9, we start out with 4, so that would be 13. So we might be able to go 5, 5, and 3. That being said, sword and shield style, it's okay, but it's not amazing, and here's why. Essentially, the only thing it gives you is while you have a shield, you get extra defense against missile weapons. The thing is, shields already give you a pretty hefty bonus to missile weapons. Not only do shields automatically lower your armor class by 1, and then an additional point if it's +1 or +2, etc., But they also get a natural, assuming you're using a large shield, which why wouldn't you? They also get a natural, I want to say +4 or -4, depending on how you look at the numbers, bonus AC against missile weapons. Which means getting another bonus 4 AC on top of it it's not useless. It's not that it would never come up. It's just, you're already a fighter. You're already probably wearing full plate mail. You already have a ring of protection or a good large shield +1. So your armor class is already low. And then you add on the large shield bonus on top of it already against missile weapons. You're probably just not getting hit. You don't need to spend points to get even more armor class. We probably still will end up putting points into here because I don't know if we'll have anywhere other useful to put points. But for the time being, we're going to look into ranged weapons. Typically, if you're not a thief, because only thieves are going to use short bows, if you're a fighter, you're going to look at long bows, or maybe even crossbows. Crossbows, they're probably arguably weaker. Longbows are going to be where you get the really strong composite bows, things that require a high strength to equip. That was something I didn't go into earlier. Strength also dictates what armor and weapons you can wear, but if you're a fighter, you have 18 strength, so it never matters. Okay, I think we're going to have Good Luther use the crossbow, and Evil Luther will use the longbow. Or maybe thematically, Good Luther should use the longbow. Because wouldn't an evil character be too lazy to even use a bow itself? Yeah, we'll have Good Luther use the longbow. So we'll put 2 points into longbow. Now this is a point where we can go into the details discussing weapon type damage. Again, we're doing this so we don't have to go into it later. There are roughly 4 types of weapon damage. There's piercing, slashing, crushing, and missile. Slashing is by far the most common, piercing probably second, and crushing is the least common, and then missile is just anything that's a missile weapon. Crushing is probably the best damage type to have in the game. But there are a couple reasons why people don't just always go with crushing damage. Crushing is going to be your warhammer, your club. Flail? Is flail? Well, mace. Mace is a weapon type. Crushing weapons tend to deal less damage, but the higher level you get, the less it starts to matter, and the more magical crushing weapons you find that start to scale more on par with their slashing and piercing counterparts. The real reason, though, that crushing is superior is because there are a lot of enemies that are immune or resistant to both slashing and piercing. Not to mention the fact that if you're fighting a humanoid in the game and they're wearing plate mail or something like that, plate mail armor gets an additional bonus to slashing and piercing and a lower bonus to crushing. Additionally, if your opponent's wearing chainmail, you actually get a bonus to crushing when you're fighting them. So a lot of the sort of under the hood mechanics and the metagaming mechanics favor crushing weapons. The penalty is, of course, you have a fewer selection of weapons to choose from, fewer early on in the game, and they deal less damage initially, but it kind of balances out to the point where you really can't just choose any weapon type and just go for it. It's probably not going to matter in the long run. Okay, with that being said, Good Luther, we're going longsword and longbow. Of course, appearance isn't terribly important. What did Luther wear in the beginning? He kind of was in that tattered cloak, or tattered prison clothes, which were white. It really doesn't matter. Luther has black hair, so we'll go with black hair. He's kind of a pale guy. So, I don't know, maybe... I mean, skin tone doesn't really matter that much. Guess we'll go with that. Clothing! Clothing also doesn't matter. We'll just pick a cool color here. We'll go with blue, maybe. With yellow-green accents. And here is the coup de grace. That's not the right word. The cherry on top is our voice packs. Again, provided by Lepcis Magna. Thank you so much, Lepcis, for making this. This is amazing. We have here our good Luther voice.
Here we go. The politics here seem worse than my curse. Care to share a mug with me?
And, of course, our evil Luther.
A new god rules this planet now. Does this make me Supreme Commander of the Tiberium Forces? Any chance you could take me to the southern continent?
So, overall, it's just a lot of fun. There's a limit to the number of voice clips you can put in a Baldur's Gate character, so unfortunately, there were a lot of voice clips that were just great, but, you know, you can only use so many of them. But of course, we'll go with the good Luther voice, and we will call ourselves Luther of Gladstone. Well, that was it. I will create the evil Luther. Oh no, wait. Well, okay. Well, I'll just tell you. I will create the evil Luther off camera. We're going to give him Bastard Sword and crossbow. That'll be the biggest difference between the two characters. Otherwise, the plan is to actually try to take separate paths through the game with both characters. There will inevitably be times where we have to overlap just because there's only so much stuff you can do in the game. But hopefully the journey there will be different, so we'll be interacting with him in very different ways. If you watched this far, for the third time, thank you. I appreciate, you know, giving me at least a platform to discuss a lot of this stuff. I find all of this to be fascinating, and I love that even after 20 years, people are still just digging up the code and figuring out just the little nuanced ways all of this works. There's so much to uncover. Hopefully we have some fun. We're gonna finish it this time. And if you are one of the very few, I'm assuming, people who watched the Let's Play, my old 11-year-old Let's Play recorded on unregistered Hypercam, and you're coming back this time, man, I am impressed, surprised, humbled. Thank you for watching again. But at any rate, I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care. See you then.